On this week's episode of the Steam Deck podcast, we're talking about the battle between Windows and SteamOS heating up, but will Steam come out on top? What's up, Internet? You're tuned into this week's episode of the Steam Deck podcast, Slipstream Games' weekly gaming podcast, all about Valve's portable PC powerhouse, the Steam Deck. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined today by my very good friends and co-hosts, Mr. Steven Radford.
Hello, hello.
And Mr. Max Wright.
Ahoy, ahoy.
Full steam ahead, boys.
Full steam ahead.
Yeah, here today, gone tomorrow. Well, gone next week, but you know, enjoy me what you got me.
Are you off again next week?
Sadly, yeah.
God, how much annual leave do you get at this?
I was like, is that news? Did you tell me that? I feel like I'm getting that revealed.
That. We had a whole thing about the team building exercise I'm doing earlier. Which
right,
I can't
okay.
talk about on here, but that's where I'm next week.
I was going to spring this on you, but now that you brought it up on the air, I feel like I have to say it. I've decided that at some point in the future, I'm going to just hit you with those out in After Dark. Like, wait till you feel like you're safe, and then, bam, team building questions.
Oh, God.
Anyway, so we're back at it like a bad habit this week to talk about the kind of ongoing simmering feud between Windows Handheld Edition and SteamOS, and we got some updates this week that give us a little bit more insight, I think, into how the Xbox Windows app is going to influence the Windows experience on these handhelds, and then we wanted to use that as a jumping off point to discuss like whether or not this is really going to be something that can kind of take momentum away from the strength of the Steam Deck brand and the fact that it is already kind of the first out the gate, the one that people think of, right? Like, will these changes be enough to kick off a Windows handheld revolution, or is it always going to kind of be playing catch up with SteamOS?
I see. I kind of feel like Steam's on top no matter what, right? At this point, they're in this new handheld mode that Xbox is rolling out this week. It's coming. It's called in the aggregated gaming library. It's coming to the new Xbox full screen experience. People can get it if they're on the insiders thing, and they can get it on the PC gaming preview build on PC already. But yeah, for the most part, it's Steam is in there. You're going to buy your games from Steam on PC. It doesn't really matter either way. Valve's getting your money.
I do agree that Steam is always going to be, because even if you buy the Xbox or you buy any of the handhelds, you're still going to buy your games on Steam because they are often cheaper. They are often, they go on sale more often. There's a wider variety of them, and also you want to be able to use those games on your main PC as well. Let's say you don't want to be buying like I don't know, or even if you own a Steam Deck as well. Maybe let's say you own a Steam Deck and a PC, you might want to be using this aggregated gaming library, but you still want to get your games on Steam, don't you? So you
yeah, like if it didn't support Steam, anybody that has a Steam Deck or that's invested in the Steam library is like, I'm not gonna buy all my games over again. Right?
Yeah, no one would use this thing otherwise. They just wouldn't.
I honestly, that's a point I hadn't thought about. That in and of itself feels like a concession, right? That like you're gonna always be chasing Steam because it's like, yeah, I mean, if you don't offer Steam support, why would I ever pick your device ever?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, just for Game Pass, I guess, but like that exists on other devices. There's no USP there, but
I guess it's interesting. USP is there for Windows because Windows has two things in my mind that it's winning with, and that's Game Pass and anti-cheat. There are some games that for some reason some developers don't want to support Linux. Stuff like Destiny. Stuff like GTA Online. We don't know if GTA 6 is going to support SteamOS. So those are some things that Windows is currently winning at. I think the anti-cheat is a solvable problem, and whether you see Game Pass as a value prop or not is really down to who you are as a gamer, because you might be the kind of person who waits and buys them on the Steam sale. We got the summer sale around the corner, and you might be like, oh, you know what? I don't see the value in Game Pass. I'm going to keep buying SteamOS and buying my devices, my games through Steam.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where like the idea of using Game Pass on a handheld PC is like obviously attractive. You know, like we've been talking about that since the Steam Deck launch of how clutch it would be to have Game Pass support. But I wouldn't buy a $600+ unit just to play Game Pass on it.
No, but if I had to make the decision between the Switch and the Steam Deck, sorry, I don't know why I said Switch, the Steam Deck and the Xbox Ally, and I already had a Game Pass subscription, or I knew that a lot of the games I was playing were already on Game Pass, I would be swayed towards that, probably.
Particularly if you're not a Steam user, right? Like if you've never been a PC gamer and you own games on Xbox, then...
Yeah. But even if you are a Steam user, this year alone, you could have saved yourself hundreds of pounds, you know.
He did.
Yeah.
You know, like if you listen to the Daily Checkpoint over on Patreon or on if you're a YouTube member, you know, that's what you spoke about, right? That you're getting such great value out of Game Pass this year.
I've gotten incredible value out of it this year. It's crazy. Like I've been using the Microsoft reward system to get free months of Game Pass. I've paid for like 1 month of Game Pass in the last 7 months, and almost every game I've played this year, I played for, you know, for free,
they've all been,
quote unquote.
They've all been worldies. You know, they've all been amazing games that are sold in. You know, they're not sold, but they are some of the top-rated games on the system. At the sorry, I can't get my words out. Most top-rated games of the year have been mostly Game Pass games. So I can see how you might want to get the Xbox One, because you might also pick up or not pick up an ROG Ally because you're not necessarily sure. You know, if you're picking up a handheld PC, you might not know that the ROG Ally is currently capable of playing your Xbox Game Pass games because it's probably not advertised as much.
But it will get this new handheld mode. That's the thing, right? Yeah. This is going to roll out to all PCs and all PC handhelds at some point. The fact that you can get it and test it and try it before the Xbox Ally is out, I think is testament to the fact that the Xbox Ally really is a marketing tool. It's for people who don't know about these handheld PCs or haven't considered them before, and they're like, oh, I've got an Xbox, I like Xbox, I can play my Xbox games on here, and that's how they kind of get it as an in the same way that sort of like the Steam Deck was, I would say, most people's even first like thought when they thought of this, or first time they'd ever seen these handheld PC devices. Not many people were really into like the Ioneos or the GPD Wins back then. No. You know, they were very niche devices, and you know, the Steam Deck has solidified that this is a form factor that people want.
Yeah, I think the Steam Deck is like that perfect middle ground of being like the idealized version of what the idealized version of a niche product, to the point where it becomes the mainstream version of a niche thing, right? Whereas like I think anybody that's a Steam gamer and is in the Steam, you know, ecosystem is like aware of the Steam Deck now, right? Whereas like, you know, you would only have heard of the Ioneo if you were the type of person who was like researching like Android emulators and stuff like that. Like it's like it's gaming, but it's like a very like specific rabbit hole. Whereas like you see the Steam Deck every time you open Steam, you heard about this Xbox handheld at, you know, Xbox's big summer event, right? So it's like, of course you're familiar with that in a way that like, you know, the Ioneos and whatnots of the world just don't have that advantage.
And you might also walk into a big box store and see this new Xbox hardware available to pick up there and then, whereas the Steam Deck has that extra, you know, hurdle of buy it, wait a week for it to arrive. You can only buy it on Steam. You might not have a Steam account.
Yeah, weirdly, I had that conversation with someone at work because he was like considering a Switch 2 or a Steam Deck. He ultimately ended up going for the Steam Deck. He was like, "Oh, I didn't realize you couldn't just go get them." You know, like I went to Curry's and I couldn't get one. I had to order it online, and now I've got to wait for it to arrive.
Yeah, I've had a few people who have been convinced on a handheld PC. I assume they were convinced on the Steam Deck, realized they couldn't get one in Argos or whatever, and then they walked out with an ROG Ally or a Legion Go because it was like, I can pick this up here and there.
That's utterly bizarre behavior to me, by the way.
Yeah, me
no
too.
Judgment, but like it's so weird in how trained we are to buy things on the internet in 2025 to be like, I went to the store and they didn't have one, so I bought something different. It's
have
like
you never
a fucking.
It's also not necessarily they go into the store. It's they go online to look for the Steam Deck, see the and they, you know, it's on the website. Wait a week, or they search they go on Argos or Currys where they usually buy these things.
Sure.
See these things and it says you can pick up tomorrow, or you can pick up today, and you're like, oh, I could have this now.
No doubt.
Still
It's
buying
just,
it online.
that is like that is an approach to being a consumer that is so fundamentally at odds with the way that I do things. Where like if like me, right, like if I was buying a handheld PC now, I would be down a fucking rabbit hole listening to a podcast like ours.
The guy
and
from Always Sunny. I've got the things like up on the wall with the string, and I'm like, I'm figuring everything out. I'm going into intricate details.
Yeah.
I'm like Googling this device versus this device, and I'm writing down lists of things of everything I want. And then ultimately, I go back to the one that I thought I was going to get in the first
But
place.
you need that validation.
Yeah,
you need to go
yeah.
through the Pepe Silvia board before you understand that the Steam Deck is the right thing for you to buy. Or you listen to a podcast like us and you listen to an insane person who did that legwork pitch you on why you should buy the other thing. And that's why we have a show.
I do more research before buying something than I did for my entire degree. I will have like a fully I'll be an expert on the thing before it's in my hands.
And Max is a doctor, so you know.
I do have a PhD. Yeah. You know, you mentioned Pepe Silvia. You know, loot pots. Part of the reason I got involved with loot pots. This is a slight off-topic tangent. Is because
context for the
Silvia.
listener. Hold on, because I think that might be a thing that you don't know if you're just a Steam Deck Pod listener.
True.
We all used to work at a different outlet together called Loot Pots, and we had a podcast there called the Potscast. That was originally a Nintendo podcast, and then became like general gaming discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Context.
So
please continue.
Put together Pixelpar, who founded Loot Pots, was known or had made his name in leaking certain things, and I'd been piecing together all the things that he'd been leaking. And I made this massive Reddit post that was basically Pokemon on Nintendo Switch. Here's the Pepe Silvia link, all the Pixelpar evidence evened out, and I sent that to Pixelpar initially when I was applying for Loot Pots, and I think that's what put me over the edge. And then remember Brandon?
Yeah, you.
Brandon said to me, he was like, oh, I've just realized, because you post all the Loot Pot stuff on Reddit, that we interacted 2 years ago because we were talking on your Pepe Silvia post about Pixelpar, about this Pokemon game, and here we are 2 years later, Anyway, that's just reminded me of that. So.
That was, don't get me wrong, fun anecdote. That was such a rough handbrake. I have no fucking idea where we just were. Can somebody pick them? And I usually will take a note or something.
Right, let's get back.
That caught me off guard, and I want to apologize.
We were talking about buying, being a good consumer.
Okay, all right. I'm with you now. All right, great. Apologies, folks. It's been a long day.
Let's go back into this. It's weird that this press release says allows you to launch all your installed titles from leading PC storefronts. Mentions Battle.net, mentions Epic Games Store, never mentions Steam.
Yeah, it is strange. However, I feel like the Battle.net thing makes sense. They own it.
They own it, right?
Yeah.
Epic Games Store, they have had a long-term partnership with them for a while. The only way you could play Fortnite on iOS was through streaming it through the Xbox platform. I think the Steam thing is kind of last minute. They've only recently probably got that over the line. I also don't know how deep the integration is there. This could be that they're just searching through your start menu shortcut.
It's
and
just
bringing it
install
in.
games, isn't it? Yeah, you can when you go on. I mean, thing is, I don't even know whether it necessarily works with Steam, because if I go on to add or remove programs and I try and uninstall some Steam stuff, a lot of the time it just doesn't show up. Whereas it does for the Xbox stuff and EA stuff and stuff like that. I can uninstall it from there. But Steam games I have to uninstall through Steam. So I think it's probably a little bit more than that.
But Microsoft makes Windows. They're going to know where Steam installs its games and where to search for them and how to integrate it. That's if they haven't got this official agreement with them. I'd imagine that there is something official, because there was, Steam came to the Windows Store last month for the first time. You could install it from the Windows Store. You didn't have to download it from Steam's website. You could just go directly there. So there is some kind of integration here, but I don't think it's going to be as in-depth as people would like. I don't think it's going to be like what you get in big picture mode when you click on a game and you can see all of your details and your achievements and your playtime and your screenshots and boot stuff up. It's not going to be that. It's going to be you click in, it boots the game.
It's a launcher.
I think there's also like an argument to be made that like part of the calculus on that is like it makes sense to lead with those two storefronts because they don't like historically, like if you are on Steam Deck, right? Like obviously you're interacting with the Steam library, right? But like there isn't a way to access Epic or Battle.net or whatever without jumping through hoops, right? So the idea of being like, oh, like this is like an exclusive kind of functionality we have to offer, I think is kind of like, you know, that is a value proposition because, you know, like everybody hates the Epic Game Store because it's like very feature light and it, you know, it's just not a great experience. And I think if you could claim your free Epic Game Store games every month and then never ever interact with the Epic Game Store, right? Like that kind of thing.
I mean, that's how I've been doing it with Heroic Launcher and soon with Junk Store version 2, which we'll be talking about in the coming weeks. There's a lot of things that I think they could do and probably want to do, but you know, I get your point. Most people who are Steam only, they're just going to be using Steam Big Picture mode, right? Like, what's the point in this Xbox experience other than the fact that I can get it to boot directly into it from a handheld PC? But surely if I can boot directly into this, I could boot directly into Big Picture mode, because I know there is that feature, but I don't know. Like it's strange to me why someone would choose this over Steam, unless they have games all over the place. Because if they have games scattered all over the place, then yeah, I guess this is a real value prop.
Are you talking about in a handheld space or in the actual PC space?
Both, I guess, like having somewhere collated everything together all in one space, and I can just see all of the games I own across every single platform. I mean, that's like the dream, you know? I mean, that's the dream I've wanted for streaming services for so long, that I can have one UI and I can search for a movie and it knows that I'm subscribed to Netflix, to Amazon, to Disney, and I just click it and I play it. You know, it seems like that's what Xbox is trying to do here. Like it knows that you've got these games on, you know, Battle.net and Epic and Steam, and I'm sure they'll add like support for GOG and for Ubisoft and for EA in the future. Like, but why can't Steam do this? Is, you know, I guess would be my next question.
I mean, I think the argument there is like there's not a huge incentive for Steam to do that. You know, like Xbox, Microsoft, right? You know, the Windows Store is not a really viable competitor to Steam. Steam is...
That's a fair point, yeah. Like Microsoft can make the money on selling copies of Windows. They don't need to necessarily sell you games and take the revenue there.
It's the same argument I was making earlier about why it makes sense for Xbox to put the Steam Store on... to allow Steam on their device versus why I would never, you know, you and I have gone back and forth about this for years where I'm like, in what universe does it make sense for Steam to support Game Pass, right? Because it's like, what? So you can not buy games that you could buy on Steam and we can get a fraction
I think it does make sense because you share the revenue. Like if you subscribe to Game Pass through Steam, we take 30% of the Game Pass revenue every month.
Yeah, and I don't know. I guess maybe, but I just don't. I don't know. Like I think
I also like I would also not be surprised if they don't offer their own subscription service at some point in the future and their own, you know, services where they can get monthly recurring revenue. Like I do feel like that there is like a route there, some kind of streaming platform. Like there's so many things that the Valve could explore if they wanted to.
And never say never, right? I certainly wouldn't count something like that out, but I don't think it makes a lot of sense because they're in such a strong position. Like you don't make, we've talked about this all the time, right? The reason Xbox launched Game Pass is because they were in a distant third place in the console race, and they it's like you don't take big swings like that unless you need to take big swings like that. And when you look at the like PC marketplace landscape, it's like, dude, I mean, it's no question, right? It's like the Steam is the place that you buy games, the de facto place. You go to GOG to buy games that are not supported on Steam, and you go to Epic if you want to play Fortnite and get your 2 free games a month that I don't even know if they do anymore.
No, they do. And every now and again, there's a good game that I want, and I'll go get it from there. So, and then I'll never play it.
But you know what I mean? Like that's I think the thing is like, why would Steam go through the trouble to allow integration of these alternatives when it's like, why would you buy games from anyone but us? We offer the best experience and the best prices, and you know, it's like they're They're the number one game in town. They don't need to play ball with anybody else. And I think in a case like this, where a competitor, right, like comes tail between their legs, like, can we put Steam on? It's like, yeah, sure, great. Use this to buy Steam games. We don't care. Wherever you're buying them, we're making money hand over fist.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, Xbox doesn't have that really.
Windows is chasing the successful model that they've already created.
Yes, they are. Yeah, and they know that if they can keep selling copies of Windows to OEMs, that eventually, maybe they stop looking at SteamOS, because I'm sure Lenovo adding SteamOS to their devices was a bit of a wake up call to Microsoft to go,
that the viable alternative exists. Yeah,
we actually do have a viable competitor, and yeah, it might not be a general purpose, operating system like Windows is. It's very much gaming focused, but that doesn't matter. It's still cannibalizing and eating into their market share for Windows.
Well, and I think
4
you have to
million
consider
potential copies of Windows that you could have sold to an OEM.
Yeah, which if they're charging $10, that's 40 million in revenue there immediately.
I think it's probably worth considering that. I think the gaming centric skew of PC users is not an insignificant amount of their business, right? Fewer and fewer people need a personal computer, like a proper desktop or a laptop, right? And there are a lot of folks that have a tablet or one of those, like what are they called? The Google had one, and I think Microsoft has one too. It's a laptop, quote unquote, but it doesn't have like any storage, and you know what I mean? It's like the thing,
Chromebooks.
Yeah. There's like those types of quote unquote computers that exist in that middle ground of, like, I think if you're the average person and all you need to do is like open your email and browse, Amazon or whatever, right? Like, it's like, do you even need a computer, right? So it's like the enthusiast market is, you gotta imagine, a not insignificant amount of their consumer base that are not corporate, right? Because that's obviously their biggest customer base. Is anytime a company provides work computers, they're buying like hundreds of Windows licenses and stuff like that. Great, and it comes built in on any OEM. Great, but like, again, that market
it's the OEMs that's the biggest market. It's like you're buying because IT might buy all their computers from Dell. Well, they've automatically bought a license from Windows or for Windows for you, and they need to continue selling those devices to those copies of Windows to those OEMs. And if those OEMs are just like, actually, Steam has given us a much better deal. We can get SteamOS for half the price,
or it's free,
and it runs better. I mean, I know there is some kind of fee that's involved in that, because they have to pay to be part of the Run SteamOS scheme and get those badges. I don't know how much they're charging for those licenses and for those copies, but I can imagine it's probably cheaper than Windows, at least to get some kind of market share. And there's been a consumer demand for it. Consumers have been tired and sick of how crap Windows is on these handheld PCs. Microsoft has finally woken up to it, and they're developing this experience. I'm going to be interested to try it, and I hope you'll give it a go as well, Max, and maybe see what you think of this Windows experience for the new aggregated gaming library. I mean, it's not got a great name.
No, I think it's crap. Yeah. I would also like to know about this full screen experience. How does that feel as a controller first experience? How does it? Because even though the Xbox app does support controller in a way, it doesn't feel like I can really go through all the menus and pick everything with the Xbox controller on the Xbox app. Ideally, this full screen experience, this whatever the aggregated gaming library, all this stuff, if it works as seamlessly as it should, and they can do a version of Windows. Now, this is not immediately, but if they can do a version of Windows that boots straight into it, cuts a load of the stuff back purely to focus on gaming, I'd be interested in trying that on my PC.
That's coming to the ROG devices later this year, and then they said that they will roll it out to other devices after that. I don't know that this. I can imagine that full screen experience will at some point be available to any desktop, and you can just have it as like go into Xbox mode.
So it says here. I mean, I don't know if I've pulled this out of the quote right, but it says here that they're adding a new feature called the aggregated gaming library to the new Xbox full screen experience, which to me suggests that in this preview there is some sort of full screen experience that exists, just not the full cut back gaming focused actual Windows.
So
but I think
I know that is coming, and they say that that's going to be available this holiday on the ROG Ally and ROG Xbox Ally. However, they say the aggregated gaming library is available in the Xbox PC app, and it just all of your games from a supported PC storefront appear in the My Library within that app, and as well as the most recent list of titles. So I think for now, that full screen experience is nowhere to be seen. That's going to only be on the new Xbox Ally later this year. We're going to have to wait and see what that's like. But I don't think it's going to be like Steam Big Picture mode at the moment. Like, just it's not there. Like, it's not. And it will be, and I'm interested to try it. But right now, this is just like, it's another cool little nice to have feature where you can have like the Xbox app that you'll never use, and it can sit there on your PC and it'll aggregate everything together. But you'll still go to Steam, and you can add non-Steam games to Steam and probably launch them from there, and that's probably what you do.
There are 2 programs I run if ever I'm on a big Game Pass binge that adds all of those games to adds all the games to Steam for me with the right links, and I go on to Steam Grid DB. I use SGD Boot, whatever it's called, to add art to it, and I boot those things through Steam every time. I barely open the Xbox app. If they can give me a reason to, I'll be up for it, you know. But I don't know if they will. Yeah, we'll see. I'm interested, but I'm also not an insider or a special Xbox guy who gets early access to this stuff. So who knows if and when I'll ever give it a go.
Yeah, I'm interested to see, I guess, like how the PC community at large engages with it, or whether they do at all, because I could definitely see it being just kind of another attempt at, rocking the boat of how people already interact with Steam. And
it's tribal.
Yeah,
I would say.
Yeah, there's a clear brand loyalty there.
Yeah, they're unwilling to let Epic ever be good.
But to be honest, I kind of get it. It's sort of the reason why people were tribal with Xbox and PlayStation. It's like, you planted your flag, you got in on that platform, you bought all your digital games, they live there. You don't want to go somewhere else, because then they are segmented, then they are all over the place. You want to keep everything in one place. If PlayStation ever did something and brought their games to PC and they had their own app and they stopped bringing things to Steam, I'd imagine people would start being annoyed. Like, people want their stuff on Steam because that's where they've been since like 2002. And that's where they've bought their games, and that's where they want to keep buying their games.
Yeah. You want to have it all. You don't want to, if you have an Xbox, all your games are on Xbox. If you have a PlayStation, they're all on PlayStation. If you have a PC, some are on Epic, some are on Ubisoft, and there is you want it to be a nice, coherent library. Unless there's like significant value in not doing that.
I guess part of the thing that's interesting about that, though, is like, I feel like so many Steam users are already like, well, I won't buy a game if it's not on Steam. So it's like, how many games does the average PC player own that are not through Steam?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think it is the type of feature where it's like, oh, that, like, to your point, Steve, it is the dream. Like, that sounds awesome to just like have this ability to automatically aggregate everything and have this very like, console like navigating experience. But it's like, again, I don't know, like how many games do you own that would even be able to take advantage of that feature, right? That you couldn't just add to your Steam library and use the exact same
yeah. And we do see there are games that suffer when they don't have Steam releases. Prince of Persia: Lost Crown didn't have a Steam release. People weren't that bothered by it, so it finally did come to Steam, and then I think it probably sold a bit more. Alan Wake 2 took a little while to break even, and a large part of that is probably due to being Epic exclusive and PC gamers not really wanting to breach that. Even though they within 2 months of release they were selling the game for like half price on Epic, but that still wasn't enough to tempt people over. because it just wasn't on Steam. That's just how like stuck to.
I mean, the Epic app sucks. It's made an Unreal Engine for starters. It's like it's not a proper app. It's bizarro. Like I don't understand it. Like they could do it. They could really solidify it, and if they wanted to, create a great experience for the Epic Games Store, but they haven't. And like it's sort of like they put their toes in. They went half in. They did the exclusive thing. They charged publishers less to publish on Epic Games only.
It's just weird that they were willing to do all of those things and spend all that money, but not spend money developing a better app experience. Because there was a period where I remember being like, "Well, it'll catch up over time, right?"
It hasn't. It still doesn't have.
It's still bad. Yeah, it's like 10 years old at this point. Like, why is it still this bad? It's nuts.
It is bad. It's really bad.
Let alone that there was like that whole thing early on that like the malware situation that got a bunch of people being like, I'll never use it. Like, that's insane. You know, it's like, I just feel like it's been so many unforced errors for, you know, like it's wild to me that they weren't able to indoctrinate the younger generation that grew up with Fortnite to adopt Epic as like a viable alternative because it's such a bad experience.
Well, it's the same reason why Battle.net hadn't been able to, right? Like the only games you bought on Battle.net were WoW or Diablo.
But the thing is, Battle.net wasn't trying to be a Steam competitor.
No, but it was at one point. Do you remember when they added Call of Duty there, and that was how they were going to exclusively sell Call of Duty on PC?
They still own it, though. Like,
they do, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's different to me. Like, that to me feels more akin to like a Game Pass strategy of something of like, this is like a platform thing. Like, if you want to play Blizzard games, you have to come into our ecosystem. But that's all that you're going to buy there, right? They're not like, hey, we brought you in with World of Warcraft and Call of Duty. Now go buy a copy of, I don't know, Moonlighters.
Why was it okay for Valve to do it? Was it just because they were first? Like, oh, we've done Half-Life and now you can buy the other stuff.
Yeah, I think that's 1,000% why. It's because when you think about where PC gaming was when Valve launched Steam, it was in a lull, right? There was a period, you know, especially in places like the UK, right, where it's like where PC gaming was huge and it was, you know, like a vibrant, thriving ecosystem. And then there was that period, right, where like consoles kind of leapfrogged them a little bit.
It was when the PS2 came out. It was like 2001, and then it really dipped down. Yeah.
And there was a period where PC gaming was like in decline, and there was kind of this question of like, is there a future in that? And you know, like how does that net out in a post PlayStation 2 Xbox world? And Steam came out and created a simple, user-friendly place for you to aggregate and buy games. And I think that's like, I honestly don't know that they get enough credit for how pivotal Steam was in revitalizing PC gaming, because I think if you're somebody that isn't like a history dork or like is like a younger gamer, right, who like has only existed in a post-Steam world, it's probably like insane to think that there was ever a point where it was in decline, right? But it was, and Steam being the first to be like a de facto, you know, place where all PC games get released, right? Like that was a revolutionary thing. And I mean, their place in the market reflects that.
They did it right at a time when it was like you had to have a CD and a key, and if you didn't have both of those things, you were screwed. And online was like you had to get like a third party server searching thing, as opposed to like it just did things right and different in a time when it needed it.
To that point, Max, right? Physical like box disc PC games, right? Like that used to be the only way you bought PC games, and like in a post Xbox arcade like world where indie games exist, it's like that was never going to work, right? That was a super antiquated system, and it, you know, them being the first one to offer something better and more modern, right? Like, yeah, of course people flock to it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I don't blame them for it, and you know, but I think now it's too late. I mean, even Phil Spencer said this, right? That's the reason they feel that they lost in the Xbox One era. It was like they lost the digital library.
Yeah, now
they're never gonna get the digital library on PC, and now they're just like, oh well, We'll bring Steam's digital library into our experience.
Like, why don't we come into this space and lose that race too?
Yeah, there's only one use case I could see for this that I would be really interested in, and that's if they do what Nvidia's doing, but better, and I can log into my Xbox app on my phone and I can stream my Steam games from the cloud or something using, I'm logged in on the Xbox platform and I'm streaming stuff from there. If I could do something like that, then I'd be interested in it. I think for now, like, it's just cool. I'm glad it's here for Windows users and people that want to use Windows. But for me, like, SteamOS just seems to be a better experience in terms of performance. It's still better. It's yet to be proven whether the gains that they say they've made from having this Xbox full screen experience on handheld is true and enough to catch up to SteamOS. So there's just a lot of questions, and I do hope they get answered as we get nearer and nearer the launch.
So let's talk about, I guess, the context of how this factors into, like, Steam Deck as an ecosystem moving forward, right? Because, we tease at the top, right, this question of, like, has Steam already won the next console generation, right? And I think we can amend that to handheld PC generation if we want. Like, I think it's there's a couple different ways you can approach it, but, like, I think we have that story we talked about a couple weeks ago now with, like, all the AMD stuff, right? And we got that new announcement from Xbox that they were going to be partnering with AMD to work on more hardware and everything. And, like, I'm interested if either of you feel like there's, like, a future where, yeah, maybe right now, maybe version 1.0 of this software is not attractive, but, like, is it possible for them to carve out a niche outside of Steam and maybe, leverage the strength of the Xbox brand or something like that to gamers that are not already in the PC space?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I think I really do think there's enough room here. I think the Steam Deck market share is super low in terms of the whole overall PC. It's probably less than 1% of PC owners have a Steam Deck. So there's so much space there and capacity for Microsoft to come in and do something with Xbox. If they're going all in on the next generation of Xbox is gonna be PC based,
PC hybrid.
Yeah, then of course, like, there's room and a way they can do stuff. And that means you get to play your Steam library on whatever device that is because it's running on Windows, and Steam's ran on Windows since the early 2000s. Like, there's a lot of things they can do. It's whether they're willing to do it and whether they're going to have the time to do it at this point. Because, like, yeah, I mean, this has got to be the last chance saloon, really, for Xbox. Like, what, we're abandoning the closed source, closed wall console ecosystem that you've known since the beginning of time and since the NES days and before, like the Atari. And we're now going down the route of you can play whatever you want and it's a PC and it's open. And that's what Steam, the Steam Deck has thrived on that. You look at the homebrew community, things like MU Deck were able to be born. But it doesn't sell. It's not what Xbox has been wanting to do to get their 30% off of every game. Like, this is a very, very different pivot to a completely new business plan. So they've obviously decided internally at Microsoft this is really kind of the only thing they can do in order to make that side of the business viable. Would be my guess.
Sorry, I was. It seems like it's less than 1%.
Yeah, less than 1%. I would
Linux as a whole is less than 3% of the whole Steam.
So, like, if you look at that, they've got 97% then, right? Of the I mean, if you count Macs, probably it's like 80. They've probably got like 80% of the PC.
Mac is 1.85%. There's less Mac than there is Linux.
So they've pretty much got the PC market captive.
Yeah.
So by having this handheld mode, it was the de facto standard anyway. and Valve doesn't lose. They're still there. I'm interested to see. I like the fact that SteamOS is a viable alternative now. I think it breeds innovation. I think it's true competition. It's the only reason I think we have this handheld mode is because we have the Steam Deck and we have SteamOS and we have the big picture mode pushing them to do stuff like this. I don't think the thought would have even entered their mind to bring Steam into the Xbox app otherwise.
I agree. And I think that's the thing I find most exciting about this is that we've talked at great length, right, about how I think broadly speaking, the competitors to the Steam Deck are lacking. They're not as attractive. They don't have the benefit of SteamOS. They all have gimmicks that are mostly uninspired, and they lack some of the core functionality that makes the Steam Deck so attractive, right? I think in the same way that, Steve, you've expressed this opinion multiple times, and it's something I agree with, the idea that, like, the Epic Game Store coming on the scene, even if it sucks, motivates Valve to respond, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to cede ground. You don't want to allow a competitor to shake the incredibly stable ground that you have built your empire on, right? And they want to be the de facto place for you to play PC games because that's what they are, and that's why they've become the company they are, right? I think when you factor in the Xbox branding, the weight of Microsoft as an organization behind a device like this, it getting premium placement at an event like the Xbox Showcase at Summer Game Fest, things like that, it just evangelizes this form factor and this type of device to more and more and more people. And even if they don't buy the Xbox device, I think it motivates Steam to up their game.
I think so too. I also think it could motivate Steam to have a physical presence in stores more than they do now.
Sure.
I know we saw this week they were in like Costco in Mexico, for example. So they are slowly moving into more stores. However, Xbox is known as a brand to retailers. It's been a staple for 2 decades. And it's a brand that consumers know, and they see the green Xbox logo, and they're like, "Oh, that's video games. I know what that is. And it's next to the PlayStation. It's next to Nintendo." And I go there, and that's where I pick up my console. That's where I pick up my games. I could see Valve wanting to get in on that more. They've obviously had a big thing in the Asia market with Komodo and with the Acer stores in Korea. I think this could push them to want to do more in the US and Europe. I would imagine that they'll want to get more people seeing the device and also trying to sell people on why SteamOS is the one for them and why Steam is the one for them and not to go with the Xbox variant. I think we'll probably see a little bit more force behind them.
I think so. Yeah, because I as we've pointed out here, right? I don't think Steam really has ever had a real competitor. And
no.
Even if Windows is constantly playing catch up, having another horse in the race that like can even nip at their heel is going to be what pushes them to iterate and to like come up with new ideas and like new advantages and new value propositions that cement the idea that it is the place to play. And of course it's the place to play.
I could see them wanting to, go to BattlEye and say, what the fuck have we got to do in order to get you to bring BattlEye to Linux and get that working so we can say, we've got Destiny, we've got GTA 6, and you can play those games here in the same way that you can play them on a Windows PC. Like, I do think that that's going to be a big thing for consumers. Like, if I can't play the game that I want to play, like then that stops me wanting to buy a device.
I think that's an interesting question too. One of the talking points that Max outlined for us in the doc here was like, how does the integration between Xbox and AMD influence parity between PC and console games? And I think that's an interesting question too, of like, that is the kind of thing that I think you could make an argument that could be a game-changing feature down the line if there is a world where because there is less work to be done across platforms, that like AMD becomes more and more, viable, right? Like obviously when we talked about AMD, there was a lot of comments of people being like, I don't fuck with AMD.
No, that was NVIDIA. They hated NVIDIA.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Sorry.
Yeah, they hated NVIDIA.
Yeah.
No, the AMD and Xbox partnership is interesting. There was a video this week with the CEO of AMD. This was when Xbox also announced partnership, but AMD's video I think is a little bit more interesting for this conversation. And she said, moving forward, AMD will go beyond building custom chips for Xbox consoles, designing a full roadmap of gaming optimized chips, combining the power of Ryzen and Radeon for consoles, handhelds, PCs, and the cloud. And we're doing it all with backwards compatibility so gamers can access their favorite titles across all platforms. I think that, for me, says that they're kind of, they're doing these partnerships with Xbox. They did a partnership with Valve. I think they're ready to just be like, we are the chip you want in your device. You're not going to go to NVIDIA and you're not going to go to Intel anymore. You're going to come to AMD and you want that chip. And to some extent, they already are that. You want the Z1, you want the Z2. If you're buying a Lenovo Legion Go S, you're getting the Z2 Extreme, you're getting that chip in there. We spoke about the MSI Claw, how the Intel version was complete crap, and you want the AMD version that's seemingly decent. I think this partnership with Xbox could generate a kind of reference design in the same way that the chip for Valve was sort of a reference design. It's kind of like a Z1 that runs at a lower TDP. And I think it's only going to help the industry as a whole. It's only going to help us get the Steam Deck 2 with probably a better chip. Or maybe it gets to the point where we're just like, you know what, the Steam Deck's got the same chip as the ROG, as the Lenovo Legion Go, and it's the same thing across the board. Developers know what they're targeting, and it's just, this year it's the Z1, next year it's the Z2, next year it's the Z3, and it's just a slightly better chip every single year, and they can just push a little bit more power every single year, and it makes developing the game simpler, and it makes consumer choice then down to, well, I'm not looking at specs, I'm looking at software. What do I like better? Do I like Windows? Do I like SteamOS? Does this play the games I want to play? And which one looks handsome and which one's an ugly beast? And that's really what it comes down to.
It becomes the console thing then, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I guess. Like all the game, we know how the games are going to run. They're going to run like this. There's no question. It's just
it comes down to vibes. It's like which one is the vibe that I'm looking for.
Yeah. Do you like the ugly Wi-Fi router, or do you like the sleek black box? That's what it came down to with the PS5 and the Series X generation. Some people really fuck with the PlayStation 5 design.
Hilarious for you to say that's what it came down to. Are you kidding? The uglier console outsold the better looking one 2-1. What do you mean?
No, I know.
That's what it came down to. Nobody wanted
that came down to digital libraries.
Famously, that's how Xbox won the generation. That's why they're number one.
It is, actually. Yeah, that is correct. No, but that generation came down to the fact that it was the digital library that followed you, and I think the kind of, if we're taking one thing away from this conversation, it's that everyone's gaming digital library is in Steam, and that's where people want it. And Microsoft has finally figured that out, that they're not going to sell you games on a Windows store, and they're not going to sell you games in an Xbox app, because people don't care about that. They want to buy their games on Steam. And so ultimately, whether you buy a game on a Windows PC, a Windows handheld, or on the Steam Deck, you're probably buying that game from Steam, and therefore Valve gets their 30% cut every time. And so no matter what, they're winning.
Steve, I'm really glad that you gave me an opportunity to just step up on my soapbox for a minute and say, hey, Xbox, put Viva Pinata on Steam, you fucking cowards. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Put it out there. Any final thoughts on this one, boys?
I just want this thing to come out so we can stop theorizing and having little updates. Just really, I should have just said nothing till it was ready. Like, why do you have to keep? Why does he have to keep running his mouth?
Max, I'd like to remind you, you have all the power in this situation as the one who organizes the show now. So,
yeah,
it's up to you, brother. Yeah.
Yeah, but you have to report almost there. You know, I can't just ignore it.
Of course.
This is like when I had that blanket ban on talking about the Switch 2 for a year.
Yeah, you're like, I'm done talking about it. It's like, well,
Yeah, I don't want to talk about this now.
There's news. What am I supposed to do?
I've got to remember when we were all talking about Switch 2 and it was actually just a Switch OLED, and then we had to wait another 3 years.
Yeah,
that was great.
I
love
love
that.
my Switch OLED. So
how long until we get the OLED of the Xbox ROG Ally is the real question. Why would I buy this later this year? When's the OLED one coming out?
I don't know. What is that? Is anyone buying that chunky beast? I seriously want to know. I seriously want to know. We don't know pricing. Maybe this thing's like 200 quid, and at that point, I'm gonna go get one. But I don't think it will be.
Now, sorry?
What's the price point where you're like, fuck it? Like, like how cheap does it have to be for you to be like, screw it, I'll get it. I don't care.
350, 400.
Yeah.
What, the Xbox Ally?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's 400 or less, I think that becomes a totally different equation because it's like, why not? Like,
if it's over 400, doesn't it then become like the most expensive piece of hardware Xbox has ever released? And it's
not their hardware though. But
no, true. But it's they're branded like it's. You know.
Word on the street is going to be similar prices to the Ally and the Ally X, which, as we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, it's like $549, something like that.
That's a lot to convince an audience who is used to buying consoles that are mostly cheap.
They're not cheap now, though, are they? Like consoles are like $500 a piece.
Yeah, true.
That's also a thing, though, right? Where it's like the idea. Context is so important. Older consoles cost more money. Like, we existed in a period where we were cushioned from the cost of consoles for a few generations.
Oh, the PlayStation 3 wasn't cheap.
No, that's true. I guess it's really just the last generation where they were all super affordable. It was like they were all within like $100 of each other, and it's like, all right, pick your poison, right?
The PlayStation 1 was like $299.
Yeah.
With inflation, that's probably $499. So it's like a very similar price point. Like they've kind of remained the same price in terms of if you factor in inflation. I think it's just human nature that you hear a number and you're like, oh, $299, that's about $300. That's a decent price. $399, $400. That's a lot of money. That seems like so much more.
Can I get a quick confirmation on the year of the PlayStation release? Was that 95?
95.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. So adjusted for inflation, it would be like roughly $600.
So it was an expensive device. Yeah. But we all chipped them and had copied games, so it was fine. We were living. All of
us, all of us with our dads who were hackers. Yeah, all of us.
Yeah, you just go to the man at the pub and you pay a $5 and you get.
It's like pop a mod chip in there for me, mate.
Yeah, exactly.
Ridiculous. All right, folks, thank you for joining us here on another episode of the Steam Deck Podcast. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about Xbox's entrance into this market. Do you think that they can carve out a niche for themselves? And how do you feel about the aggregated gaming library feature? Is that something that, might motivate you to collect some more free games from the Epic Games Store, or to maybe test out some other, software from other launchers that you never got around to because now you can have it all in one convenient place? Or does it not move the needle for you because it's not Steam? That's my guess. I don't see a universe where you can shake the faith in the Steam brand. It's very strong. And I just don't know. But I mean, we get reminded in the comments all the time that there is room for more than one game in town. So I guess we'll see what happens on that one. But of course, flipscreen.games is the website where you can write in with those thoughts. If you want to drop us a line, get your thoughts read on the air, go check out one of our sister shows, Nintendo Noise or the Flipscreen Games podcast, or just come and join our Discord and keep the conversation rolling between episodes. You can do all that and more over at flipscreen.games. That's our website where you'll find all the places we are all over the web. And of course, I want to give a very special thank you to our Patreon producers for the month of June. It is still June. And they are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valens, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Sobe, Project Julian, Steve Stompy, Susan Still Likes Cats and also Boobies, Voodoo Vic, That One Kid Nick, Tyler Dude, and Wakahula. Thank you all so much for your support on patreon.com/flipscreengames. You all the reals to the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. For the crew, I've been Pete, he's been Steve, he's been Max. We'll see you next week.